Then she smiled. She reached for the buttons on her shirt. And before I could stop her, she ripped it open and screamed at the top of her lungs. "Madeline, what are you doing?" She scrambled to her feet, backing away from me, still screaming. I began to hear loud footsteps, and soon the class was filled with the students.
"He tried to touch me. He almost raped a high school student."
The moment those words left her lips, the entire class went silent. I stood frozen, my heart pounding so loudly I could barely hear anything else. My mind screamed at me to say something, to defend myself, but before I could even process what was happening, a group of students surged forward. Hands grabbed my arms, shoving me toward the door.
"You sick bastard! I knew there was something off about him."
I was 27 when I started teaching at Westmore High, and I was already counting the days until I could leave. I thought teaching here would be a great opportunity, a way to gain experience, save up, and move on to something better. But on my first day, I realized exactly what kind of place Westmore was. It wasn't just that I was the only Indian teacher, it was that I wasn't wanted here. The students made that clear immediately. The first day I walked into my first class, ready to introduce myself, it took a different turn. Before I could say a word, someone in the back whispered loud enough for the whole room to hear.
"Great! A curry muncher."
They all burst into laughter, making me feel so embarrassed. I tried to figure out who the culprit was, but the students were masters at hiding their guilt. No one would meet my eyes. I was frustrated. It was just my first day of teaching, and I was already having issues. But I let it go. I told myself it was just one comment, just one student. Hell, I was wrong. Every single day was a test, a game to them. How much could they do before I snapped? I had no idea. They left garbage on my desk, wrappers, crushed up chips, sometimes even spoiled food. My whiteboard markers would disappear, only to turn up later with the tips sliced off so they wouldn't work. One day, I walked into my classroom and saw massive writing sprawled across the board in red marker, which said, "Go back to your country." I was shocked. Regardless of my anger, I thought they were too young to be such racists. I turned to the students, waiting for someone to look guilty, to shift uncomfortably, to show the smallest hint of remorse. Nothing. They sat there, relaxed, smirking, waiting to see what I would do. I didn't want to pour my anger on them. I just wished one person admitted so I would have the chance to talk sense into them. I probably made a mistake by not speaking up there and then. Anyway, I wiped it off and started the lesson. Even in the middle of lessons, they would throw balled paper at me whenever I wasn't facing them. And if I looked, they would pretend as usual. It didn't stop there. When I walked through the hallways, students would cough into their hands and mutter slurs under their breath. I'd sit in the staff lounge, eating my lunch, and overhear students outside the door, mocking my accent. An accent I didn't even have. I mean, even though I looked purely Indian, I'd spent over half of my life in America. Before then, I'd lived in Italy for 5 years. So, I had no Indian accent. I wasn't ashamed of my original accent. Hell, I sometimes feel bad for not having it. But it was insane that they were mocking me for something I didn't have. Then there was the time I assigned a history project. When I was collecting the papers, one student handed me a blank sheet with just 3 words written in the middle. "Go back home." I kept it. I don't know why. Maybe to remind myself that I wasn't imagining things. But if the others were cruel, Madeline Sinclair was their queen. She didn't just make my life miserable, she enjoyed it. She was the devil herself. And every day I woke up, I prayed and hoped she would arrive a changed person. But of course, that was a dream that would never come true. She came into my class late every day. Whenever I call her out on it, she would smirk and lean against the door frame.
"Sorry, Mr. Sharma. I had important things to do. You wouldn't get it because the only important thing to you is dance."
The rest burst into laughter. Some even stood up and danced the way Indians did. It was so infuriating. While her minions did that, Madeline would be on her phone, pretending to not see everything happening. I tried taking her phone away once. She pulled it back before I could reach it.
"Are you even allowed to do that? What, do you think this is India? Take your stupid culture to your country. America isn't India, got it?"
And of course, she said all that using an Indian accent. I could swear she learned it. She sounded so local. She had time to learn the Indian accent, but never did any assignments. I ignored her and moved on with the lesson. But Madeline found new ways to push me every day. She'd lean back in her chair, raise her hand in the middle of a lecture, and cut me off before I could call on her.
Is it true that your people worship cows? Like, do you guys pray to McDonald's or something?
The class erupted in laughter. They always gave her reactions. I felt so angry and embarrassed, but I kept my expression blank and continued with the class. Another time, she faked a sneeze and immediately covered her nose.
Oh my God, I think I caught something from you. You don't think you gave me any Indian sickness, do you? I don't want to start dancing out of control.
She wiped her hands on her designer sweater and pulled out a bottle of hand sanitizer.
Sorry, just being careful. You know how dirty foreigners can be, especially you Indians. I hear India lacks toilets. I hope Donald Trump sends some money over there to help build toilets.
No one stopped her. No one told her to shut up. If anything, they followed her lead as always. One afternoon, I walked into my classroom and immediately smelled something strong and familiar. I didn't need to inhale too much to know that it was curry. I wondered who was eating curry until I reached my desk and saw that it was covered in curry. Thick, yellow, and dripping onto the floor. Laughter echoed around me. Phones were out, cameras recording, waiting for my reaction. I swallowed hard and turned around.
Oh no, Mr. Sharma. Is it too spicy for you?
More laughter sounded. I was so angry, but I reminded myself that they were kids, and I had to be calm. I spent my lunch break scrubbing my desk, the smell of turmeric and humiliation clinging to my skin. I thought about quitting. Every day, I thought about quitting. But I didn't. I didn't because I refused to let them win. I didn't because I told myself that things would get better. But I was wrong. Because Madeline wasn't done. Not even close. And what she did next just changed everything. Firstly, I noticed Madeline becoming quiet. For weeks, I watched in silence as she transformed before my eyes. The girl who once mocked me at every opportunity, the one who humiliated me in front of the entire class, had suddenly turned polite. It started with small things, a nod in the hallway, a quiet greeting. Then, she started actually participating in class. She turned in her assignments on time. She asked thoughtful questions, never interrupted me, and even told off a student who tried to crack a joke at my expense. I didn't know what to think. One afternoon, I finally asked, "Madeline, did you hit your head or something? You've been different lately."
I guess I just realized you didn't deserve all that crap. That's all.
That was it. No further explanation. And as strange as it was, her change affected the entire class. If Madeline wasn't making fun of me, no one else wanted to either. Slowly, the classroom shifted. The whispered slurs stopped. The laughter at my expense died down. For the first time since I started at Westmore, I felt like a real teacher. And for the first time, I felt like I actually belonged. I was happy and relieved. Because truth be told, I had been one bad day away from reporting everything to the headmistress. Unfortunately, Madeline hadn't changed. She was just preparing and waiting for the perfect moment to ruin my life. It happened on a quiet afternoon during break. I was alone in the classroom when the door suddenly creaked open. I looked up and saw Madeline. As she stepped inside, something about the way she moved set me on edge. I watched her as she came to sit on my table.
You have such a nice voice, Mr. William.
Excuse me?
It's so calming, so deep. I changed because of you. You know? You made me see things differently.
Get to the point. I'm busy. She walked around the desk, stepping into my space. Before I could react, she pressed her body against mine, her hands sliding up my arms.
I want you, Mr. William.
I'd never felt so scared. I grabbed her wrists and pushed her away. She stumbled, lost her balance, and crashed onto the floor. Get outside. For a split second, she looked up at me with wide, stunned eyes. Then she smiled. She reached for the buttons on her shirt. And before I could stop her, she ripped it open and screamed at the top of her lungs. "Madeline, what are you doing?" She scrambled to her feet, backing away from me, still screaming. I began to hear loud footsteps, and soon, the class was filled with the students.
He tried to touch me. He almost raped a high school student.
The moment those words left her lips, the entire class went silent. I stood frozen, my heart pounding so loudly I could barely hear anything else. My mind screamed at me to say something, to defend myself, but before I could even process what was happening, a group of students surged forward. Hands grabbed my arms, shoving me toward the door.
You sick bastard! I knew there was something off about him.
I didn't do anything. Madeline's lying. But no one was listening. Their voices blurred together in a storm of accusations and disgust, pushing me through the crowded hallway toward the headmistress's office. Students peered out of classrooms as we passed, whispering and pointing. By the time we reached the office, my body was trembling with anger and fear. The headmistress, Mrs. Holloway, sat behind her desk, her normally stern expression replaced with shock as she took in the sight before her. She turned to Madeline, who was still crying tears that I knew were fake, and asked what the issue was.
He tried to touch me. I told him no, but he wouldn't stop. He grabbed me. He pushed me against the desk.
That's a damn lie. I never touched her. She came to me and I pushed her away. We continued going back and forth until Mrs. Holloway decided to speak.
William, I need you to leave the school for the day while we investigate this matter.
I wanted to fight. I wanted to scream that it wasn't fair. But I knew how this worked. A single accusation, and I was guilty in their eyes. So I left. They didn't call me back until the third day. The moment I stepped inside the main hall, I realized the entire school was gathered, including Madeline's parents.
Before we begin, I'd like to personally apologize to Mr. William. We have reviewed the security footage from the classroom. Not only was Mr. William innocent, but the footage also exposed months of harassment and bullying he has endured at the hands of his students.
I could see the shame on the students' faces.
As of today, Madeline Sinclair is expelled from Westmore High. Her actions were not only malicious but criminal. Falsely accusing someone of such a heinous act is unforgivable. And for you, her parents, I leave her future in your hands, but this school will not be part of it.
Madeline's mother breathed sharply, shaking her head in disbelief. Her father looked so angry. Madeline, for the first time since I had met her, looked genuinely afraid. But Mrs. Holloway wasn't done.
As for the students who participated in Mr. Williams' harassment, you will all be suspended for a full month.
Some of them gasped, some burst into tears. Mrs. Holloway ignored them.
And your disciplinary records will reflect your actions.
Some students looked like they wanted to protest, but they didn't. They knew they had no defense. Madeline didn't get a commendation letter. She didn't deserve one. With the report that documented everything she had done, I doubted any school would accept her. She had destroyed her own future. That wasn't enough. I filed a lawsuit for defamation, which I won. Madeline's parents were forced to pay me a huge amount and were so angry that they disowned her. I heard she now lives with her grandmother, who is a farmer, and forces her to work on the farm nonstop. As for me, my story gained a lot of attention. I was invited for interviews and even wrote a book, which became a bestseller. A tree is known by its fruit, not by its leaves. Thanks for watching.
Mrs. Calloway slapped me so hard my ears rang.
You ungrateful rat! Do you know how much I got that bracelet? How dare you steal it?
She grabbed my hair and dragged me downstairs to the kitchen. Mr. Calloway and their children were already there, waiting.
I told you she's a thief.
I can see that now. You want to steal from me, right? Then let's teach you a lesson. When we're done with you, you'll never use that hand of yours to take what doesn't belong to you.
I didn't understand what was happening until Mr. Calloway grabbed my wrist and pushed my hand over the hot stove burner. I screamed as the fire burned my skin. They just watched and laughed. And when they finally let go, I collapsed on the floor, holding my burned hand, sobbing in pain.
Maybe next time, you'll remember your place and not dare to steal from us.
I used to live in a world of luxury, surrounded by expensive things and never worrying about anything. My parents were rich, respected, and kind. They taught me to be humble and hardworking, even though I never had to work. But everything changed when I was 19. My parents died in a car accident, and I was left all alone. I thought I still had a home, that my uncles, aunts, and cousins would support me. But instead, they took everything. There was no will, no legal document saying what should happen to my parents' wealth. So my family decided I deserved nothing. They threw me out of my own home, taking every bit of money and property my parents left behind. I had nowhere to go. For weeks, I stayed in shelters, ate whatever I could find, and prayed for help. Then one day, I found a job listing that seemed like a blessing. My father's old business partner and best friend, Mr. Calloway, needed another housekeeper. The job didn't pay much, but I was desperate, so I applied.
Well, look at you. The mighty have truly fallen.
I was embarrassed, but I forced a smile. Yes, sir, unfortunately. And that's why I just need a job.
I suppose I could use an extra hand. My wife has been saying we need another girl.
I had no choice. The day I took the job was the day I walked into hell. The Calloways were extremely rich. Their mansion was even bigger than my late parents' house, but I just guessed that it was because my parents didn't like to live too extravagantly. At first, I thought Mr. Calloway was the worst. He was strict, short-tempered, and always yelling. But I soon realized his wife, Mrs. Calloway, was even worse. She treated her maids like trash, ordering them around and slapping anyone who annoyed her. And their children? They were spoiled, cruel, and loved making the staff suffer. I learned that fast. During my first week, I was cleaning the upstairs bedrooms when their teenage daughter, Lila, called me over. She had her friends with her.
You missed a spot, maid girl.
I actually thought I'd missed a spot. But when I looked around, the parts I'd cleaned were sparkling clean. It was then that Lila burst out laughing and started pouring her juice on the floor. She ordered me to clean it while her and her friends were still laughing. I was going to clean it with the mop stick, but Lila stopped me.
Clean it with your tongue, maid girl.
I looked up at her, hoping she was joking, but she wasn't. She grinned and pulled out her phone, recording me. Her friends were laughing too as I was forced to lick the juice off the floor. I burst into tears because there was nothing I could do. She didn't only record and store the video in her phone, she posted it, and her fellow rich friends who saw the video joined in mocking me, saying I got what I deserved for being underprivileged. When her parents returned, she also showed them the video, and instead of telling their daughter off, they found it funny. Mrs. Calloway even went as far as pouring more juice on the floor and making me lick them off. I felt humiliated, but I had no choice, and that was only the beginning. One night, after finishing my chores, I went to the kitchen to drink some water. Mrs. Calloway was there, sipping wine.
You think this is your home? How dare you walk into my kitchen without knocking?
I had no idea there was a rule to knock before entering the kitchen. But of course, the Calloways would do anything to put me in a bad light. I'm sorry, ma'am, I was just getting water.
Did I say you could? You can't afford to buy water for yourself and you think you can get mine whenever you want? How dare you?
I tried to speak, but before I could even get one word out, she threw her wine glass at me. It hit my arm and shattered, cutting my skin. I wanted to cry, but I held it in, watching as blood flowed out from the cut.
Clean it up, and if I ever catch you acting like you belong here again, you'll regret it, stupid orphan.
As I cleaned the glass and wiped away the blood, I was shaking the whole time. Days passed, then weeks. The abuse only got worse. One morning, I set the table for Mr. Calloway, but forgot one fork. It wasn't like he ever used that fork. It was mainly there for decorations. But since I was the one who forgot to include it, he snapped at me.
Are you stupid? How dare you set an incomplete table and call me to it?
I'm sorry, sir, it won't happen again. I'll get the fork now. As I turned to go get the fork, Mr. Calloway grabbed my wrist so tightly I thought it would break. Then he shoved me to the floor and I landed hard on my butt.
Maybe if you spent less time daydreaming and more time working, you wouldn't be so useless. Get someone else to bring the fork. I don't want to see you for the rest of today.
I bit my tongue and nodded before leaving. That night, as punishment, I wasn't allowed to eat. I stood in the corner while they enjoyed a huge dinner, my stomach aching with hunger. There was a night that Mrs. Calloway called me to her room. She was drunk and looking so angry that I couldn't even look her in the eyes.
You stole from me, you stupid orphan. How dare you steal from me?
What? No, I didn't steal from you. I'm not a thief.
Don't lie to me.
She threw her jewelry box to the floor, scattering necklaces and rings everywhere.
I know you took my bracelet.
I swear, I didn't do that. I would never steal from you or from anyone. Mrs. Calloway slapped me so hard my ears rang.
You ungrateful rat. Do you know how much I got that bracelet? How dare you steal it?
She grabbed my hair and dragged me downstairs to the kitchen. Mr. Calloway and their children were already there, waiting.
I told you she's a thief.
I can see that now. You want to steal from me, right? Then let's teach you a lesson. When we're done with you, you'll never use that hand of yours to take what doesn't belong to you.
I didn't understand what was happening until Mr. Calloway grabbed my wrist and pushed my hand over the hot stove burner. I screamed as the fire burned my skin. They just watched and laughed. And when they finally let go, I collapsed on the floor, holding my burned hand, sobbing in pain.
Maybe next time, you'll remember your place and not dare to steal from us.
That night, I realized that if I stayed there, I might not survive. But I had nowhere else to go. The bracelet was found in the living room the next day. Mrs. Calloway had forgotten it there. Well, guess who wasn't given even as much as an apology? Instead, I was blamed for showing too much bad behavior that led to me being tagged a thief. I continued to endure all they gave me, until one day. I'd done nothing to them, but Mr. and Mrs. Calloway decided that they were in the mood to teach me a lesson. I begged them. I cried my eyes out, but they refused, saying they needed to tame me more in case I had any plans to harm them or escape in the future. They tied me up so tight and began flogging me, both of them using a belt each. I screamed at the top of my lungs. I was in so much pain. No one could hear me outside because the house was soundproofed. But the maids couldn't endure seeing me suffer like that. One of them secretly called the cops. Another maid stylishly took a video of everything. The cops, thankfully, were very quick to arrive. When the Calloways heard a knock, they tried to quickly untie, but the maids were faster. Even though Mr. Calloway's children tried to stop the maids, they managed to defeat them and unlock the door. The cops walked in on the commotion happening. I was halfway untied with bruises all over my body.
Mr. and Mrs. Calloway, you are under arrest. This is a mistake. I have done nothing wrong. We're just giving her discipline for being bad.
You can't arrest us. Do you know who we are?
But the cops didn't care. Lila and her brother already slipped out of the house when they saw things getting out of hand. Mr. and Mrs. Calloway tried running, like the cowards they were. Mr. Calloway made it to the back door, but he slipped on the wet marble floor, crashing down hard. His leg snapped with a sickening crack, and he cried out in pain. Mrs. Calloway didn't get far either. She tripped on the stairs, tumbling down with a scream. By the time she hit the ground, her arm was bent in a way that arms shouldn't bend. They were caught and arrested right there, crying and injured, their expensive clothes stained with blood. But it didn't end there. After news spread about their arrest, Mr. Calloway's rival leaked news about Mr. Calloway being a dubious man. Investigation began, and it was revealed that he was involved in so many fraudulent activities, as well as bullying other business owners. His companies were sealed, as well as his houses. After the husband and wife were sent to jail, the court financially compensated me and the other maids. I also thanked them for saving my life. I managed to rent a small apartment with the money. As for their kids, I heard that Lila had gone to live with her boyfriend. However, she got pregnant 6 months later and got kicked out of her boyfriend's house because he didn't want a child. Lila was spoiled rotten. She'd never worked a day in her life. So she struggled with working as a laundry lady while being pregnant. As for her brother, well, he followed in his father's footsteps. He thought he was smart, that he could outplay the system. So he joined a gang who were famous for robbing banks. For a while, he got away with it, until he didn't. One night during a heist, the police cornered them. Everyone in his gang ran, but he wasn't fast enough. He got shot in the leg and also got arrested. Just like that, he joined his parents in jail. I should have been satisfied, but there was one more thing left, which was my parents' properties. I had no idea how to get them back from my evil relatives until an old friend of my father visited me in my small apartment. Apparently, my father did have a will, not just a written one. The man told me that my father had recorded his will, but the unfortunate incident claimed his life before he could prepare a written one. My father had given the man his own recording because they did it together. and my father was closer to the man than anyone else, even though they didn't show it much. The man explained that after my parents' death, he had fallen sick. By the time he recovered, he couldn't find me. My relatives also pretended to not know where I was, because they thought the man wanted to take care of me. I cried so much when I listened to the recording. All of my parents' properties were rightfully mine. The man swore to help me get them back. He got me a good lawyer, and we took the case to court. It took months, but in the end, I won. I got everything back. Every house, every business, every cent. As further appreciation for saving me, I found all the maids at the Callaways' mansion and gave them $5,000 each. My father's friend never left my side. He became a father figure to me, helping me manage my wealth well. After reclaiming what was rightfully mine, I turned my attention to my so-called relatives, the ones who stole my parents' wealth and left me with nothing. First, I exposed their greed and betrayal to the public. I leaked documents proving their fraudulent claims over my inheritance. News outlets picked up the story, and soon their reputations were in ruins. They were shunned by their wealthy friends and business partners, left to wallow in disgrace. But that wasn't enough. I made sure they lost everything they had gained from my parents. With my legal team, I sued them for financial fraud, forcing them to return every house, business, and dollar they had taken. When they couldn't afford the legal fees, their properties were seized, leaving them destitute. Some of them, in desperation, tried to start over in new businesses, but I had already ensured they would be blacklisted in every industry they touched. Word spread quickly. No one wanted to associate with thieves. Two of my uncles, who spearheaded the theft of my inheritance, became so broke that their children had to drop out of school. Desperate and with nowhere else to turn, they shamelessly came to me, pleading for work.
Please, we are really sorry. It was the devil's work.
I smiled and hired them as janitors at one of my companies, ensuring they did extra work for no pay. Later on, they attempted to hire someone to steal from the company, but their plan backfired. The thieves were caught and revealed who had sent them. As a result, my uncles were arrested and locked up in prison. Abandoned and disgraced, their wives and children left them and moved to a new state. Thanks for watching.
But she really wanted to go, and so I relented, and we left. We had a great time, and spent nearly the whole weekend on the beach, sipping tropical drinks and just breathing in the ocean air. When we got home, though, both of us nearly had heart attacks when we saw our backyard. Our fence along the side of the yard that we shared with Ralph was knocked over, and all the plants between the fence and our pool were ripped out and scattered around the yard. And I don't know how they did it, but they emptied our pool and filled it with garbage. It smelled so bad that I nearly vomited. I was so angry that went out into the garage and was going to get my baseball bat and do something with it when my wife stepped in front of me and told me to calm down. Hi there, my name is Anthony, and I had the worst possible neighbor you could imagine. Now, I may have gone a bit overboard with getting retaliation. I'm usually a very calm and easygoing person, but I was pushed beyond my limits. Here, let me explain what happened, and then you'll understand what I mean. I have been living in the same house for over a decade now, and about 6 years ago, my neighbor Ralph and his family moved into the house next door. Ralph and I got along fairly well, but his teenage sons Bobby and Teddy were very unruly. They would constantly do crazy things like ride their bikes through my front yard and rip up my yard. That, or they would have pool parties with a bunch of their friends and would drink even though they were underage. There was one party in particular where they had over 24 people over and partied until 5 in the morning. They were being so loud that I got nearly no sleep at all. I was tempted to call the police, but I chose to speak with Ralph and maybe appeal to his good nature. I figured that if I called the police that it might just make for some bad blood between our families, and rather than poking that bear. I waited until Ralph came back so I could speak with him. Hey there, Ralph. I hate to be that kind of neighbor, but your sons went a bit overboard the other night. Yeah, they made quite a mess. I guess they were just blowing off some steam. Okay, but I had to work the next day, and they kept me awake the whole night. And they made a mess on my side of the fence even. Well, yeah, you know how it is. Boys will be boys. Ralph. With all due respect, that really isn't good enough. There were dozens of beer cans in my yard and they got sick in my bushes. Ralph, can you please have a word with them and try to get them not to be so rowdy next time? Honestly, They really weren't that bad. Maybe you should just not be such a stick in the mud and just mind your own business." His responses were not even remotely acceptable, but all I could do was hope that he would see reason, and that if the boys had another party, that they would be more aware of not being so loud the next time, at the very least. Sadly, that wasn't the case. Literally a month later, Ralph and his wife left to go away for a weekend, and I knew that his sons would definitely have a party that night. As the day went on, Ralph's sons' friends began to show up. My wife and I were swimming in our own pool in our backyard, when suddenly some teenage boys were leering over the fence at my wife and calling her all kinds of lewd names. "Wow, check out the body on her." "Yeah, she's my type for sure." "Hey there, beautiful. Why don't you come over here and have a drink with us?" "Yeah, wow. Maybe you could take your top off at the very least." Both my wife and I were disgusted, and so we went inside. We figured that, at the very least, it would be quieter, and with any luck, that later, closer to bedtime, that they would quiet down. As midnight came around, though, they were extremely loud. Once again, I was tempted to call the police, but didn't until 1 a.m. when we heard people in our backyard. There were so many people next door that several of them spilled over into our yard and were swimming in it. As soon as I saw them in my pool, that was the last straw. I called the police right away, and a few minutes later they showed up. When the sirens and lights were going off, the teenagers dispersed and ran in dozens of directions, and the police gave chase. A few minutes later, it was quiet, and my wife and I breathed a heavy sigh of relief. In the morning, we went outside and found our backyard a complete mess. There were bags of garbage in our pool and beer cans everywhere. A large word was carved into the hood of our car that read, "Snitch." It was carved with keys, I think. When Ralph came back, I stormed over and told him that he needed to do something about his sons, or else I would call the police on them from now on. It was not well received. "Ralph, this has got to stop. Your sons are out of control." "I don't care what they did. How dare you call the police on them? My boys spent the night in jail because of you." "As they should. They are underage, drinking, and they trespassed onto my property and were swimming in my pool. They even left garbage in it and keyed my car." "Ralph, how dare you defend them?" "I don't give a damn about your car. I demand you apologize for getting them arrested." Both of us were seeing red, and before I knew it, we were shoving one another, and then Ralph threw the first punch, and we were on the ground rolling around, punching and kicking one another. Our wives had to pull us away from one another in order to get us to stop. We were like animals. Months passed, though, without incident. I could only assume that Bobby and Teddy were laying low so that they wouldn't get in trouble from the police, but I also knew that it was only a matter of time before Ralph left once again for a weekend away and the boys would misbehave. However, nothing happened, and my wife and I thought that maybe the last party had been just what was needed to get some sense into those boys' heads. On a whim, my wife suggested that maybe we should go away for a weekend. I was hesitant, but she really wanted to go, and so I relented, and we left. We had a great time, and spent nearly the whole weekend on the beach, sipping tropical drinks and just breathing in the ocean air. When we got home, though, both of us nearly had heart attacks when we saw our backyard. Our fence along the side of the yard that we shared with Ralph was knocked over, and all the plants between the fence and our pool were ripped out and scattered around the yard. And I don't know how they did it, but they emptied our pool and filled it with garbage. It smelled so bad that I nearly vomited. I was so angry that went out into the garage and was going to get my baseball bat and do something with it when my wife stepped in front of me and told me to calm down. We ended up calling the police, but when they came out, they told us that there wasn't anything that they could do, as there were no witnesses. They simply couldn't prove who it was that had done the damage and vandalism. It was then that I planned out my revenge. I went and got a bunch of supplies that I would need for my plan, and I waited until Ralph would go away. I didn't have to wait long, and as soon as I saw him pull out of his driveway and drive off, I went into action. Ralph always left very early in the morning for his weekend trips, while his sons always slept in nearly to noon. And so I used the morning to set up my revenge as quietly as I could. I had bought a liquid blue dye that I added to their pool in enough quantities that it wouldn't be obvious that it was there until someone jumped into the pool. I then snuck into their house through the back door and dumped rotten eggs throughout the house. I had been saving them in my garage in an airtight container and with my nose plugged and a mask on. I hid them throughout Ralph's house. I honestly don't know how Robbie and Teddy slept through it, but I got in and out without them noticing, and then I disposed of supplies I used and sat back in my own backyard and waited. After a couple hours, the two boys ran out of the house desperately gagging and looking for fresh air. Neither knew what was wrong with their house, but they weren't going to let a smelly house ruin their party, and so they called up their friends and told them to still come over. Once there were about a dozen people, they all jumped into the pool and began splashing around. As soon as I knew they were in the pool, I snuck around to the front of the house and removed the valve stems from every tire of every car in the driveway, flattening all of the tires, and then went back inside my house to watch the carnage unfold. It didn't take long for people to realize that the pool was turning their skin blue, and while some tried to rush into the house to wash it off, others tried to go to their cars to drive home and wash it off there. Those that ran inside quickly ran right back out, and those that had tried to use their cars were also frustrated, and they returned to stand by the pool. None of them knew what to do, and as the sun set, none of them had come up with a plan. They ended up sleeping in the backyard that night, but the kicker was that around 10 at night, a wild thunderstorm rolled in and drenched all of them in cold rain. By the time the morning came, there were dozens of blue teenagers that sat around Ralph's pool crying and miserable and unsure what to do. It was then that Ralph came home, and he and his wife saw all the cars in their driveway and went around out back to see why the party was still going. The boys told them everything that had happened, and Ralph knew instantly that I had a hand in it, and so he called the police. Much like I had experienced, though, they told him that there wasn't anything that they could do as there were no witnesses. 2 days later, there was a for sale sign on their front yard. I heard through other neighbors that they had tried to get rid of the rotten egg smell, but couldn't. They had even hired professional cleaners, and they could not get rid of the smell. They really didn't have much of a choice, and so they chose to sell. After a couple of weeks, they found a buyer, but because of the smell, they lost a lot of money on the sale. The new owner had pretty much given them less than half of what the house was actually worth, and so they moved away. Bobby and Teddy were both stained blue from head to toe for months on end. I know this because I saw them more than once completely blue. Ralph and his wife ended up buying a house on the opposite side of town, and I was very happy. We passed by each other from time to time, but thankfully I never had to deal with Ralph or his sons ever again. So maybe I went a bit too far, but after what they had put us through, I'm just grateful that they caved in and sold their house as quickly as they did. Thanks for watching. Make sure to subscribe and leave a comment down below saying I subscribed, and we will try our best to reply to your comment. You listen to me. I took care of Charlotte and the kids. I deserve something from her inheritance. You owe me big time. Are you nuts? You caused her death, you monster. You caused her to neglect her kids, and you gave her the poison that killed her. As far as I'm concerned, you should have died instead of her. It was then that he punched me, and it definitely hurt, but I was so angry and full of adrenaline that I ignored the pain from it, and I dodged his second punch, and then started punching him. I had hit him over a dozen times before people dragged us away from each other. I was left with a black eye, but I broke his nose and his cheekbone, which left a pretty nasty scar. Hi there, my name is James, and things have been really topsy-turvy lately. It would do me a world of good to get a few things off my chest. Let me start off by saying that my family has had a bit of a rocky history. Both my parents were alcoholics, and while they never abused my sister Charlotte and I, they were very abusive towards one another. It's taken a lot of effort, but I have managed to avoid falling into the traps that the rest of my family has. My sister, however, hasn't, and has made some questionable choices, especially with the men in her life. I absolutely love my niece and nephew, but their fathers are some of the most horrible men on the planet, and when Charlotte left them, I was greatly relieved. Thankfully, neither of them is in her life anymore, other than to pay child support, that is. On more than one occasion, I offered to care for my niece and nephew because I wanted to be a good role model for them and help them to avoid the pitfalls that plagued my family. And Charlotte was all too eager for the free babysitting. I usually watched the kids while she was at work, since I work remotely, or for a weekend here and there. But that was before she started seeing Arthur. To be honest, I did not like Arthur as he was very abrasive and constantly bragged about having money and owning the finest of things. Charlotte, however, adored him and thought that she had found Prince Charming and that she was with someone that could finally give her the rich and expensive life that she had always wanted. Soon after they started dating, she began asking if I could watch the kids for multiple days or long weekends, but soon it became a week or two here and there, which was fine by me. I loved the extra time I got with them, and we had a great time, but it was an expense that I hadn't budgeted for, and although I could afford it, I wanted to know if Charlotte could help out. Hey Charlotte, you know I love spending time with the little ones, but I was wondering if you could help out by sharing the child support payments with me. It would help me with my budget significantly.
Why are you so ungrateful? Don't you love your niece and nephew?
Of course I do, but if you need me to watch them for a couple weeks, I could use some money to help pay for their food and clothes and such. I wouldn't need much, but whatever you can spare would be a great help.
Fine. Whatever. Arthur has more than enough money to cover all my bills anyways. Here, take my debit card and only use it for the kids.
I thanked her, and the next time that she left for a 3-week trip with Arthur, I used it a few times to buy food for the kids. Careful not to abuse the responsibility that she had entrusted me with. When she got back, though, things felt odd. Both her and Arthur didn't look well. They looked like they hadn't slept the entire time that they were gone. Hey, are you okay? You don't look well.
Yes. Arthur and I just partied a bit too hard, but we're good now.
I was a bit skeptical, but I didn't really have any reason to doubt her, so I said goodbye to the kids and went about my day. However, 5 nights later, I got a call in the middle of the night. I was startled awake by it, and when I answered, it was my 8-year-old niece on the phone.
Uncle James?
Hey sweetie, shouldn't you be in bed?
I can't sleep. I'm hungry and Mama won't make me something to eat.
Okay, I'll be right over, sweetie. Confused, I grabbed some leftover pasta from my fridge and drove over to my sister's place. All the lights were on in spite of it being 3 a.m. Both my niece and nephew were awake and they looked like they hadn't bathed in a few days. I gave the pasta I had brought over and they eagerly gobbled it up. When I asked when the last time that they ate was, they told me that they had lunch the previous day, but that they had nothing since. I was so angry, but I didn't want to startle them. So while they ate, I quietly tiptoed away to find Charlotte. She and Arthur were passed out on their bed naked. On the nightstand was a pile of drugs, and it didn't take a genius to realize that my sister had been neglecting her children, so she and Arthur could get high. I checked to make sure that she had a pulse, and then I went and packed a bag for the children and took them back to my place where I bathed them, fed them again, and put them to sleep. Later that same day, I got a call from my sister that made my blood boil.
Hey James, are my kids with you?
Yes, they are asleep in my spare bedroom.
Oh, I must have forgotten that you were babysitting them this week. Whew, that's a load off my mind.
No, Charlotte. I wasn't supposed to be babysitting them, but my niece called me up last night saying she was hungry, and when I went to your place, I found that they hadn't eaten in nearly 24 hours. And then I find out the reason that that is the case is because you and Arthur were too high to either notice they were hungry or that they were even gone. What is wrong with you?
Oh, shut up! You don't know what it's like being a mother. You only watch them occasionally, but they are my responsibility all the time. It's incredibly stressful, and I was just blowing off some steam.
That wasn't just blowing off some steam. That was self-destructive behavior. Didn't you learn anything from the mistakes our parents made?
Don't you lecture me! Now give me back my kids!
I knew that legally, I had no grounds to keep my niece and nephew. And so when they woke up, I fed them again, and then brought them back to my sister's place. We didn't exchange too many words as I dropped them off, but I could tell that Arthur and Charlotte were very upset with me. For 2 weeks, I didn't hear from them or my niece and nephew until Charlotte stopped by one day unannounced.
Arthur is taking me on a 10-day cruise. I need you to watch the kids.
Well, it's a bit short notice, but yeah, I suppose I can. Without thanking me, she turned and left the kids with me and walked away. As casually as possible, I welcomed the kids inside. They seemed quite upset and looked like they could use some cheering up, so I took them to the zoo. It did the trick, and by the time that we returned to my apartment, they were in good spirits and were talking animatedly about all the animals that they had seen. I did use my sister's card to pay for the outing and then again for dinner for us. I just felt that since she surprised me with the unexpected visit that it was the least she could do. The days passed, and although I didn't know exactly which day she would come back to pick up her kids, I figured that after 11 or 12 days that I would see my sister. After 2 weeks passed, I began to be worried, and I started messaging and calling her every day, but never got a reply. After a month, though, I decided to go to the police and report her missing. After a few hours, they informed me that she was in her own home and that she appeared to be inebriated, but otherwise okay. Annoyed, I went over to her house and I pounded on the door until she answered.
Oh, it's you. What do you want?
I wanted to know where you were and if you were alive. Did you forget about your kids?
Oh yeah, where are they? Did I ask you to look after them?
Yes, that was a month ago. Charlotte, where have you been?
Here, listen, I'm tired. I'm going back to bed.
She then slammed the door in my face. Dumbfounded, I left and returned home to watch over the kids. I didn't know what to do, but a few days later, I got a call from the police. Arthur had reported that Charlotte had overdosed and passed away. I was stunned and speechless. The next few weeks were a blur or paperwork and planning. Charlotte had wanted a simple funeral service, and we made sure that she had a beautiful one. Thankfully, Charlotte had the good sense to make a will, and in it, she left me everything. Her house, her belongings, and her finances as well. She also named me the guardian for my niece and nephew, who were taking the news of their mother's death poorly, but that was to be expected. Arthur, however, decided to take a completely different approach. He was upset that he didn't inherit anything. As it turned out, Arthur had been lying the entire time. Every trip they took or thing they bought had all been on credit, and he was in over his head with debt and wanted Charlotte's money and house in order to pay it off. Of course, I didn't care about his problems. As far as I was concerned, he had been the cause of Charlotte's death, and I wanted him to suffer, but he thought otherwise. You listen to me. I took care of Charlotte and the kids. I deserve something from her inheritance. You owe me big time. Are you nuts? You caused her death, you monster. You caused her to neglect her kids, and you gave her the poison that killed her. As far as I'm concerned, you should have died instead of her. It was then that he punched me, and it definitely hurt, but I was so angry and full of adrenaline that I ignored the pain from it, and I dodged his second punch, and then started punching him. I had hit him over a dozen times before people dragged us away from each other. I was left with a black eye, but I broke his nose and his cheekbone, which left a pretty nasty scar. He tried to place charges on me, but the police considered it to be self-defense, and I wasn't charged with anything. I never got to see him ever again. I really wish I hadn't been pulled away from him, although I probably would have ended up killing him if I hadn't, though. Not that he didn't deserve it. A few months later, I saw on the news that Arthur had been arrested for trying to smuggle drugs into the country and was locked up. He was definitely trying to make some quick cash and clear his debt, but it landed him straight in prison. And so, that is my story. It isn't really a happy one, but there is a bit of a silver lining. My niece and nephew are doing really well, and I will make sure that they follow my example, and not my sister's, and have happy and healthy lives. Although the money from my sister's finances wasn't a lot, I did sell her house, and with the money, I was able to create a very healthy education fund for both children so that their schooling will pretty much be paid for, which will really help them out in life. As for Arthur, he has been in and out of jail a number of times from what I hear and is living in poverty. The last time I saw him, he had lost all of his teeth and because of his addiction and was living on the streets. And me, well, I feel very guilty not having stepped in and trying to save my sister from Arthur's influence. I don't know if I could have made a difference, but it haunts me that there was a chance that I could have maybe saved her from such a bad end. As a means of recompense, I focus all my energy on making sure that my niece and nephew have happy and healthy lives and to make sure that they don't fall into the same traps. So far, so good though. Thanks for watching. Make sure to subscribe and leave a comment down below saying I subscribed, and we will try our best to reply to your comment.
So I doubted that he was lying or exaggerating. The next morning, I stormed into Kevin's school, demanding to speak with his teacher. When I walked into the classroom and saw him standing there, my stomach dropped. It was Tom. For a moment, we just stared at each other, both shocked into silence. Then he smirked. That same infuriating smirk from all those years ago.
Well. If it isn't little Gloria, what can I do for you?
The way he smiled, and now knowing who it was, gave me all the information I needed. It was clear that even though he had grown older, that Tom had not grown up, and that he was still the same old bully that he had always been. Lose the smirk, Tom. I know exactly what's been going on. You can stop bullying my son.
Oh, come on. Don't be so sensitive. Kevin needs to toughen up.
So you don't even deny it?
Nah, that little wuss that you've been raising is too soft and a little pansy. He needs thicker skin, and the best way to do that is to call him a few names and smack him a little. It's what made me the strong man I am today.
Hi there. My name is Gloria. Being a mother is never easy, but being the mother of an autistic child presents a unique set of challenges. My son, Kevin, is my world. I love him more than life itself, but every day is a battle to make sure he's safe, happy, and treated with kindness. My own childhood wasn't easy. I was always the awkward kid, and lots of my classmates singled me out because of that. As someone who knows what it's like to be bullied, I wanted to make sure that he never had to experience it. I spent my entire childhood tormented, especially by one person, Tom. He was such a cruel and malicious person, and he took great delight in making me miserable. When I grew up, I swore that my child would never endure the same cruelty I did. Growing up, Tom made my life a living hell. He would trip me in the hallways, spread rumors, and mock me relentlessly. One time, he locked me in a storage closet for an entire lunch period. When teachers finally found me, he smirked and got off with nothing more than a warning. I spent years trying to forget the way he made me feel. Helpless, small, and unworthy. The worst, though, was when my parents gave me a bicycle with which I could ride to school, and Tom stole it and threw it off the local bridge into a river. I owned it for literally only a single day, and he destroyed it just because he thought it was funny. Once I graduated from high school, I thought that I was done having to put up with him. But life has a twisted sense of irony. One afternoon, Kevin came home in tears. My heart shattered seeing him so broken. He didn't want to talk about it at first, but eventually I calmed him down enough that he was open to talking. Kevin, baby, what's wrong?
My teacher. He's been so mean to me. He calls me names when no one's listening and makes fun of me in front of the class. I tried to ignore it, but today he called me a freak. He forces me to carry his bag to class every day and makes me speak in front of the class, even though he knows I struggle with communication. Mom, I can't take it anymore.
Oh, baby, that's terrible. How long has it been going on?
He's been mean to me for months now, but I didn't want to say anything because he said no one would believe a moron like me. Mama, he makes me feel so small.
Well, I'm glad you told me. Now I can help make things right. I'll get him to stop and to start being nice. Rage boiled in my veins. No one was going to hurt my son. No one. Of course, I had to give this teacher the benefit of the doubt and investigate and find out what exactly was going on. But I had always known my son to always tell the truth, so I doubted that he was lying or exaggerating. The next morning, I stormed into Kevin's school, demanding to speak with his teacher. When I walked into the classroom and saw him standing there, my stomach dropped. It was Tom. For a moment, we just stared at each other, both shocked into silence. Then he smirked. That same infuriating smirk from all those years ago.
Well. If it isn't little Gloria, what can I do for you?
The way he smiled, and now knowing who it was, gave me all the information I needed. It was clear that even though he had grown older, that Tom had not grown up, and that he was still the same old bully that he had always been. Lose the smirk, Tom. I know exactly what's been going on. You can stop bullying my son.
Oh, come on. Don't be so sensitive. Kevin needs to toughen up.
So you don't even deny it?
Nah, that little wuss that you've been raising is too soft and a little pansy. He needs thicker skin, and the best way to do that is to call him a few names and smack him a little. It's what made me the strong man I am today.
Kevin, you idiot. That is abuse and you had better cut it out or I will make sure that you lose your job or worse.
Looks like you finally grew some courage, but can it? You were a loser in school, and you and your dumb son are losers now. You have no authority over me.
That was it. I warned him to leave my son alone, but he laughed in my face. I left that day knowing words wouldn't be enough. If I wanted to protect my son, I had to take action. So I made a plan. I started documenting everything. Kevin's complaints, statements from classmates, then took it a step further. I hired 2 thugs to kidnap Tom, beat him up, and force him to confess on camera. They posted the video online. After that, I took my case to the school board. With undeniable proof, they had no choice but to fire him. I mean, it was either that, or suffer a lawsuit from myself and the parents of any other child that Tom had bullied. To inflict even more chaos, I used my skills as a hacker. I worked with companies to find weaknesses in their systems for a fee. This time, I turned my talents against Tom. I hacked into his phone and made it look like he had been chatting with minors. Then, I leaked the incriminating messages online. The internet exploded with outrage, and people started making videos cursing him. His reputation was completely destroyed. But Tom wasn't going to let it go so easily. The school board let him go without any pay or benefits, and as a result, he would never again be able to get a job as a teacher anywhere else. Tom was furious. After his dismissal, he showed up outside my house, seething with rage.
You ruined my life, Gloria. Do you think I'm just going to let that slide? You always were a pathetic little rat.
No, Tom. You ruined your own life. When I was a kid, you made my life miserable. And now you were doing it to my son. Did you honestly think I would let that keep happening? I'm not some weak child anymore. Now leave. You made your bed, now you can lay in it.
Such big words from such a pathetic little runt. What are you gonna do about it, huh? You think you can take me? Do you think you can force me to leave?
What Tom didn't know was that years of anger and fear had fueled me into action. After school, after work, I had taken self-defense and martial arts classes. I had trained for years, learning how to fight, how to stand up for myself. So I was more than a little prepared for what happened next. Tom took a swing at me. I dodged easily. He tried again, and this time, I countered, driving my fist straight into his ribs. He staggered back, stunned. I'm pretty sure that I managed to break at least 2 ribs with my strike, and the pain that reflected on his face confirmed it.
You crazy bitch.
I didn't stop there. I twisted his arm behind his back, wrenching it until I heard a sickening snap. He screamed in pain, but I wasn't finished. I kicked his leg out from under him, sending him crashing to the ground. Another sharp crack echoed in the night when his leg hit the concrete. In an instant, I knew that I had broken both his arm and leg, as both were bent at odd angles. I knew that he wouldn't be hurting anyone else anytime soon. Tom lay there, groaning in agony. For the first time in my life, I saw fear in his eyes. The same fear I had once felt because of him. It felt great to finally get revenge for what he had put me through when we were younger. I knelt beside him and whispered, "If you ever come near me or my son again, I'll break more than just your bones. I will make sure that you will be stuck in a wheelchair for the rest of your pathetic and hate-filled life." That still wasn't enough. I hired someone to make Tom regret his actions. Every now and then, they would break into his house, move the furniture around, and leave horrifying notes written in blood on the walls, making Tom freak out. Eventually, he vanished from town, humiliated and broken. And deep down, I felt something I never thought I'd feel. Justice. Not just for myself, but for Kevin. For all the kids who had ever been bullied by someone like Tom. Kevin never had to worry about that teacher again. After that, I started taking him to martial arts classes, and although he struggled, he found confidence in himself for learning martial arts. It made me feel a bit confident that he would be able to protect himself the same way I had protected myself from Tom. But that wasn't the end of my journey. In the months that followed, Kevin flourished. Without the daily torment of his teacher, he became more engaged in school, making friends and embracing his uniqueness. I watched as he smiled more, laughed louder, and walked with his head held high. One day, as we sat at the dinner table, Kevin looked up at me with big, bright eyes.
Mom, I know what you did for me. Thank you.
What do you mean, sweetie?
I know you got my teacher fired. I know you fought for me. You're the best mom ever.
Tears welled in my eyes as I reached across the table and took his hand. I'll always fight for you, Kevin. Always. Justice had been served, but more importantly, I had given my son the strength and safety I never had. I wish I could go back in time and tell my younger self that it would get better one day. As for Tom, I wasn't done with him yet. I created a fake profile and managed to lure him in with a false job offer, promising a high-paying position in a distant state. We chatted online for about a week, and I gave him a fake contact number. Excited by the opportunity, he booked his flight. only to arrive and realize he had been completely duped. I never responded to him again. I still stalk him online, and from what I've seen, the viral videos ruined his reputation. He ended up working as a janitor at a school. Serves him right. Thanks for watching.